before we dive into our discussion. And with that, I'll start with Wendy Berger. She is the President and CEO of WBSE. Wendy, I will pass it over to you.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to CoreNet for having me this morning with everybody. Delighted to be a part of this great program. Quick bio on myself. I am the CEO and founder and president of WBS Equities. We specialize in ground-up development, renovation, and sale-leasebacks of food manufacturing and food distribution facilities. And as you can see from my virtual background, which says Green Thumb, I am on the board of directors of Green Thumb Industries. Green Thumb is, depending on how you measure it, the first or second largest multi-state operator in the legal marijuana business in the United States. As of this Wednesday, we will have 44 retail dispensaries open across 12 states with licenses for 96 and 13 cultivation facilities across those 12 states, and growing, pun intended, growing like weeds, and been in the marijuana business for 7 years now. Laura, I can't hear you.
Right, thank you. Thanks for that. And Sheila, Carol, I'll pass it to you.
Hi, thank you. Also excited to be here. I've helped plan this event for the last couple of years, so this is a very different seat to be in. I just recently made a career change. I started my career in architecture and design at Gensler for a good chunk of time, and then switched over to workplace strategy at CBRE, and just recently switched over to Nick Point Ventures as their creative director, overseeing development and leasing. So we primarily have one big project in Chicago. The rest of my team is based out of New York. We're only an 8-person team right now, so we all wear a lot of hats. I focus most of my energy now on our big development of Fields, which is over on the northwest side of Chicago, overseeing the marketing, design, and leasing strategies for the almost 2 million square foot project that we have there, as well as a couple initiatives with the rest of our portfolio.
Yeah. Big project. And Daniel?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for the opportunity of participating in this program. I really like interacting with young people. In any case, I am Daniel Klein. I'm originally from Argentina. I came to the US 31 years ago now to start my own business. And I would define myself as an international entrepreneur. I've had businesses in Europe, in Australia, in South America, as well as Canada and the US. And I think probably the most important thing that hopefully I can pass on to all of you is to look at the big picture, and we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And last but not least, Jake.
All right, thank you. And also I'd like to echo, thanks everybody, for joining. Jake Domina, was a member of the CoreNet Young Leaders for a while as well, and spent about 11 years in the real estate and construction industry. Anywhere from started at a very large national developer, went to a construction company, then spent the bulk of my career over at CBRE, primarily working in healthcare. Then I spent the last couple years at Power Construction doing business development. And in June of last year, I left my real estate and construction career and joined the industrial hemp and CBD industry. So I left to join 3 other founders of a company that focused on the supply side, which was really, we farmed 50 acres of hemp in Wisconsin. And we did a lot of consulting work and some third-party help for people in Wisconsin. My other partners in the business came from Colorado, which had a very established hemp and CBD type industry. So, Wisconsin being very new to it, a lot of the people, just the education wasn't there, the connections weren't there. So we focused a lot on filling that gap. And through that, I actually started my own company. Started it in January, but we just launched in April, which is it's called Perseus Wellness, and we are a CBD product line. I found that there was a lot of CBD product out there that was either just mislabeled or miseducation, and it was hard to find really high quality, very transparent CBD products, that really worked. So that's when I created this company to kind of fill that niche. So we're definitely a startup and focus locally and expanding from there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. So I think based on the four of you, that there's a lot of, items that come into this of starting your career, going after your dreams, chasing your dreams. So I'd like to open up today with a question that'll give us all some extra insight to not only your career, but your own motivational drive to succeed. So with that, I'd love to talk about taking risks. And a lot of us in our lives avoid risk because we don't want to take those chances. But if you could speak to what are some of the catalysts or multiple catalysts in your career that pushed you forward in taking risks, that would be, I'd love to hear that. And we can start with Sheila on that one.
Great. Yeah, I love this question. I feel like this is, and I probably have like a really methodical answer to it that's not super risky, but it still feels risky for me. One of the things that I do in terms of my own career is I do like 3 month and 6 month check-ins on different things. And I typically, one of the things that I have is career, like I call them career idols. So I have like 3 people, they can change, they can stay the same. But what I've done throughout my career is looked at what their skill sets are to see what got them to where they are. And as I started to see certain people stay on my list of people that were in my radar, breaking down what jobs they had or what skill sets they had to get to where they are and identifying the gaps in what I had to get there has probably fueled most of my risks and career changes. So I identified while I was working primarily in a creative industry that a lot of the people that I was seeing that I wanted to mirror had analytical backgrounds as well. So that kind of was the impetus to make the switch into workplace strategy. So figuring out, wanting to work out a different side of my brain. And then as I got to like 11 years in massive companies, I think one of the biggest things is I identified a lot of people were working on their own or in small companies. And so starting to find avenues or ways where I could take a risk and start to do something in a smaller company so that I could make more decisions on my own. So I think for me, the risks are figuring out a strategy behind why I need to do them, and then knowing that if it makes me nervous, I've probably overthought it enough to have a safety net behind it. But being able to kind of have those targets that you're trying to hit while taking those risks means that at least what you've done before, you can always fall back on as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Would anyone else like to chime in on that one?
Sure. For me, and I have a finance background, so I tend to see things from the lens of numbers. But risk is not this big scary thing, and people should not think of risk and associate it with fear. Risk is about assessment. It's about understanding the parameters and making bold and big choices. And this doesn't mean they're necessarily risky choices. It means that you have taken the time to understand what the risk is, assess it, and then make choices. And I think risk and fear are very closely associated. And what I encourage the young men and women that I mentor to do is start by asking yourselves a question. What would you do if you had no fear? And then think about risk in that context. And think big. I'll talk more about it later, but the theme here is big, unbounded thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to start. I think personally, I took a humongous risk moving from Argentina to the US to start a business with very limited capital and a family. And one of the thoughts that motivated me to move and take this risk was something that a good friend of mine, about 30 years older than me, once told me. And he said to me that I was about 30 years old when he told me this. He said to me, there's the biggest sin is the sin of omission. In other words, if you have a vision, if you have a goal, if you want to do something, you have to pursue your dream. Yes, assess the risk. I'm all for calculated risk. I always, when you're in business, you're risking every day when you're a small business. But I think the main motivator should be where you want to be in 5 or 10 years or 15 years, and what would it take to do it? And obviously, you know, the younger you are, the more risk you can take. So I think that is something very important for you guys to have in mind.
Yeah, and I would just quickly add that I think that's great. And I was going to say something very similar to where you need to zoom out sometimes and just kind of look at everything and where you're at, and both personally and professionally, and see, is this where I want to be? Is it leading me to where I want to end up? And you need to really look at that. And so if the answer is no, that helps make the risk less scary and more of like something that you feel that you should do in order to get there. And also I think the fear of change is a big part of it. And I would just say, just embrace the change. Sometimes you may have started, one career or one, you may have went down a path that was right at the time, but everyone learns and everyone grows and everyone changes. And so as you change, don't be afraid to, think that, well, maybe I'm making the wrong move, but you're not the same person you were a month ago, 2 years ago, whatever. So I just say, embrace the change and know that, you've made it this far in whatever you do. And so if you continue to embrace change, you can get yourself on the right path and then, make it in that as well.
Adding to what Jake said, another of the motivators for me to take risks has always been something that my grandmother, I'm sounding very old, but something that my grandmother told me, and she was a very resilient, strong woman with limited education. And in her ways, she told me something that I think is very profound, which is, from nothing comes nothing. So if you don't take risk, nothing is going to come out of what you're doing, okay? So I think that was a very simple thought, but very powerful as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something too that Wendy said that triggers another thought of mine is the think big. It struck a chord because that's something we do at CoreNet every year as a board. We have a think big session to look forward in the future and what there is. So with that, I mean, I'd like to expand a little bit on that, but it also dovetails into, how and where have you found inspiration to encourage your ideas and push you forward in your careers? And I'll leave that open to anyone to take.
Well, I'll jump off of that and to follow on. I gave a TED talk a couple of years ago, and if anybody wants to watch it, it's on YouTube. But the title of the TED talk and a Pechakucha talk on the same thing is Big Thinking Precedes Great Accomplishments. So this notion of unbounded thinking, doesn't matter if it's realistic or not, but if you start with the macro, if you start with great imagination, you can then drill in. But if you don't allow yourself the freedom to think big, innovation is very hard to come from small thinking, small or narrow thinking. So unbounded and big thinking precedes great accomplishments.
Yeah, and I think you know, for me at least, the key to finding inspiration is just being present and open to it, having an inquisitive mind, you know, reflection throughout the day. It's when you spend too much time thinking of the past or thinking for the future, it can be hard to find that inspiration that's just all around you. So I think really being present and not getting, you know, the blinders on, so to speak, allows you to find something that maybe you would have missed that really inspires you. So I think that's a good route. And actually that's how I founded my current company, Perseus Wellness. I was focused on the other part of the business, and I was, you know, focused on getting investment and growing our consulting. And on the side, I was just selling some CBD oil to family and friends just because they would ask for it and they'd tried CBD before and they're like, it doesn't really work and things like that. So I would, you know, it wasn't part of my business model. I would sell to them and it was helping them so much. And they would come back to me with these crazy stories about how they sleep way better and their life's much better. And so anyway, but because I was open to hearing and realizing that, I realized, hey, this is where I should go. So I was inspired to start the new company by focusing on, you know, the present.
I think on that too, which like to mixed reviews from teams I've been on, but like I'm a strong believer in like the life of the side hustle. I probably have like 2 or 3 other jobs that I do besides my main job, and I've always held that as a really important thing to me because I think outside of what we see every day, if we have experience with other things, that helps us think big. Like if we're open to those opportunities and we're open to different ways of thinking. We just had a whole big conversation on my new team about like we need to think like beginners sometimes, because like a lot of times if you don't know the rules, then you don't know that you're breaking the rules. You just start approaching the problem in a new way. So we've come into a lot of hurdles in this new environment that we're in, and we're like, let's like scrap this. This is how we've always done it before, and just think about like how can we most easily get to where we're going. And a lot of times it's that new, fresh outlook of something that's not kind of the way that we've always done it.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah, I would add to that too. Sorry, just one more thing is embrace hobbies and things like that. I think like I'm a songwriter, big into music, you know, I also do meditation, things of that nature. But I think when you're focused on a hobby and something that you enjoy doing, it allows your mind to wander a little bit and roam and start thinking of other things. So definitely stepping away from whatever your day job is and, you know, embracing hobbies, I think really helps you find inspiration.
Yeah. And I mean, in that note too, I feel like we all have, you know, really strong values that push our decisions, and whether that is your own, you know, personal hobbies that inspire you, familial values, how you were raised, where your mindset is moving forward with what your current focus is. Are there any core values within each of you that you'd like to share with us that drive you forward?
Well, this is certainly a good moment to think about your own personal values and about life. We've all had some time to reflect. And I think we're seeing some of the very best of humanity and unfortunately some of the very worst of humanity at this moment in time. But in business, particularly on the real estate side of our business, at the very beginning of this, I gathered my team together virtually, of course, and said, everything we do from this moment forward during whatever this crisis is, we will think about humanity first and make all of our decisions with humanity in mind first. We will be kind, we will be empathetic, we will listen. And that guides us. And it, you know, if you think about your own personal and your corporate mission, vision and values, they can help to really ground you and to guide you in a time of great confusion and anxiety.
Along the line of what Wendy's saying, I think that it is a businessman's purpose in life and in business. It's not only to create profit, but also businessmen, leaders have a responsibility towards the community and they're key people in helping society. And when I'm saying that, I am saying that business people should not let greed overcome their thinking. As business people, we're supposed to create value and we're supposed to create wealth, but not only to ourselves, but we need to spread it around to the people who work with us and to the community that we live in.
I think those are really good. One of the things that value that drives me is definitely, there's a couple things, but one is wellness, this whole idea of holistic wellness and really, having a solid mind, body, life, everything in balance type of thing. And I know my friends and family are probably sick of hearing about it sometimes from me, but that's something just always in my life that is important. And so, that's pushed me and that's something I strive for. And it's a big part of the reason that I got into the wellness type of industry. And, because I want to share that and help others. And it's something I always strive for, but that living passionately, which kind of really goes into that. So, work is a huge part of your life. And if you're not living passionately through that, that's really, you're missing out. And so life is short. And so I think you really got to embrace it and get everything out of it. And then my other thing that really pushes me is, the concept of the way things are done. And I've always just kind of been entrepreneurial and try to pursue the life that I want. And, many, many times other people are going to be like, that's not how it's done, or, you can't really do it that way. And you're going to hear a lot of that. And it's just, that's fine. But that's what drives me. And that's a big thing, is like, I want to show that you can have everything, so to speak, or at least everything that you need. And that's a big driver for me. So those are my values that push me to accept risk, because not doing it would be worse.
I think I agree with all of the ones that have been said. And I think the only one that I try to also add in is, and it's a word, we just went through guiding principles of our marketing, and I feel like I pushed back on this word being one of our guiding principles, but I think there's something about authenticity. I think I've always approached a lot of situations where I've gotten feedback that I've shared more than I should have, or like we can hold off this information. And I just feel like if you come to the table, you are who you are. We are honest about where we're trying to get to. Like, we're going to find better solutions at the end of the day. And also being authentic to what we're trying to do at the end of the day. So like, if we're trying to be a part of a community, like, we need to actually think about that in all of the decisions that we're doing, and not necessarily have it be all of these other things coming first. And being able to know who you are, and you can have that be a part of all of your decision making. And I think creativity is probably the only other one that's a core of all things for me. It's and that to help push boundaries. I mean, I get feedback all the time that I'm like, I just don't follow any rules, but it's like, I just want to know all the rules so that then I can make my own rules. But I feel like that creativity and authenticity is what drives that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like creativity should be one of your words as a creative director. So
yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's, speaking of authenticity, I'm also a firm believer of transparency, which I think ties well into authenticity, and especially in a time like now where people need to know what's happening in business and in life. And some people have a very unclear direction of where things are going. I know, Daniel, you went through some hyperinflation in the years. Many of us, you navigated the crisis of 2008, 9/11, things like that. So how have you navigated and remained resilient in previous difficult economic challenges while these all went in conjunction with your career?
Well, I think it's a very good question. Just because of my age, I went through a few more crises than you guys have. And also in Argentina, not only because of the country's politics and economics, but because of the nature of the population, everything is melodramatic, okay? And having said this, I think the first thought that comes to my mind is never panic. The tougher the situations are, the more you have to slow down. It's like you go into a third dimension and it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You have to slow down. You have to keep your head clear, assess, again, your weaknesses and your strengths, and draw a plan that will work for you and work for your company in times of crises. Crisis means, the etymology of the word means opportunity, and I definitely think that crises are opportunities if regarded and with tranquility and objectivity, and not but by the panic that you see around you.
I'll chime in here. You know, there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. The first one was something I heard recently. I've had the opportunity to participate in some public company board education programs, one in particular at Harvard Business School. And so I've been watching some Harvard Business School webinars that they're doing for this group entitled Crisis Leadership. And in the very first one, one of the professors, or the dean of Harvard Business School, said crisis leadership is innovation on steroids. And I loved that. I mean, you know, when you talk about resilience and trying to lead, whether you're leading your own life, a small team or a large team, this is a time for decision making without a lot of information. And we're making decisions. We're getting up every day and making the decision first to get out of bed and face these crises and face the anxiety, face the fear. And then it is being bold and courageous and making decisions. And I think for what I recommend for young people, for anyone, when we're talking about resilience, is I came up with, borrowed from my real estate business, this metaphor of tools in a tool belt. And if you think about what works at all times, the same tools don't work on the same problems at all times. So I have what I call a set of tools in my tool belt, and it is really nice in when you need to be resilient to have a set of preset tools or a framework for tools that you can grab. And those tools can be physical things, like I begin my day each day, and I think I've done it 62 days in a row with an hour of yoga. It's a tool in my tool belt. And some of the tools can be those physical tools, and some of them can be things like practicing empathy. One thing I think is critical right now and critical for resilience, listening. So at that, I'll stop and I'll listen.
I would just add, be adaptable and realize that life isn't always a straight line. And so, you know, I'll use the example that when I graduated college, it was right at the heart of the financial crisis, and the company I had a great internship. I had a year. The way my college worked, it was a month or a semester school, semester work, semester school, semester work. So I had about a year and a half with a great developer, which went from about $2 billion a year to a couple $100 million, and laid off 3/4 of their staff. So it was not a job for me anymore after college. And it just so I was working at a really large bar in downtown Milwaukee where I went to school, bar restaurant, and they offered me the assistant general manager position. And I think, you know, I could have just said no and kept forcing my way, and, you know, because it wasn't what I went to school for. It wasn't what I was planning on, but I took it. I embraced it. And I think the other thing is, when you are adaptable and when you know, realize that it's not a straight line, you have to fully, once you make that decision, you have to invest and learn from whatever it is you're doing, even if it's a parallel for now, because, you know, I did that. I ended up after about 7 months, it got bought out, and I ended up becoming the general manager, and I was the youngest general manager in the company's history. But what that did was I learned a ton, and I spent some time there. And then when the time was right, it comes to my final point, I think, which is like, be patient. Don't try and take the wrong opportunity just because opportunities are slim and you're looking for something to do. I think, I found the right opportunity, and at that point I took a job back in Chicago with a construction firm and got myself back into this industry. But now I attacked it with, I had management, I had 100 and something people under my employ. I learned all about sales, marketing. I learned all about people. That experience was invaluable to everything else in my career. So I would say that be adaptable and know that your career doesn't have to be a straight line the way that you think of it, because you can learn tons from the opportunities that do present themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can keep it short, but I feel like we probably graduated at roughly the same time. I feel like coming out of college and everyone being like, there are no jobs. Like, this is just what you're coming into. I feel like I ended up going home with my parents, and my dad, I was working at a coffee shop at the time, where I also worked up to be the manager. So Jake and I lived parallel lives and didn't know it. But my dad said that I had to, if I was able to stay there, I had to have 2 meetings, like 2 to 4 meetings a week with people, whether or not they were hiring, just to get out there and meet people. And I think that's carried over throughout my career, is that you never know when a relationship is going to turn into something, or when a connection is going to somehow take you somewhere. I went on a random tour of this building with my coworker because I'd wanted to see the inside of the building. And then I ended up getting poached over and into my new job based on that. And so it's like, just follow your curiosity and your relationships. And I feel like they'll take you places, even if there's not a lot of opportunity. Building those relationships will help when it's a good or a bad economy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, with that also, right now, all of us being home, and I know, Sheila, you just, got yourself into a new business. Wendy and Daniel, you're very invested in what you do. Jake, you're starting a new business. How has working from home adjusted your own, communication, how you're staying connected with people, whether it's your clients, your coworkers, even the people you're home with? And has that adjusted like your motivational levels? Are you more motivated now that you're home to succeed? Are you finding yourself getting more creative? I'll let someone take it away from there.
I'll take that one. Yeah, I think it actually leveled my playing field with my team kind of nicely. They were all together in the office in New York, and I was alone in Chicago. And so now it's forced better communication between them with each other, actually, which I think then has made the whole team stronger, because they used to just be able to rely on shouting across the room to get answers from each other. And now it's much more intentional. We have a structure around meetings. We have specific check-ins. It's created a good cadence of work, and we're open to kind of having it not work the first couple of weeks, which I think was nice too. I think a lot of times you put new practices into what you're doing and you're like, this is going to work. This weekly meeting is going to be perfect. And I think we found that we had a weekly meeting, and then they wanted to have 2 other check-ins, and we just had to be the 2 other, we're just in meetings all the time. So let's just do 1 other check-in. We created some that were every other week, and we were really open to all weighing in on how it was impacting both just our general stress level and our productivity. And I think the team's also been really open to if you need to just take some time, take it. So I like to walk every day and walk for an hour. And if it looks like it's going to rain in the afternoon, I'll just be I'm going to be out, because I want to make sure I get my walk in before it's raining or things like that. And everyone on our team is doing that. So it's also opened up some communication around how we manage our stress and manage our lives together as well. So it's been oddly very positive, minus being locked in our houses.
True.
I think so much of this, particularly initially, there was so much uncertainty. There is still a tremendous amount of uncertainty. But at the beginning of this, all of our lives in one way or another were completely changed, and the world changed around us in what felt like a moment. And that's not easy for anyone. And so I think there's a lot more talk about it now, but it's okay not to be okay. And in particular, you know, it's part of CoreNet's mission, and this group in particular, asking for help is okay. So I think for my team, I've done a lot of checking in. I've been sending fun things to people's houses. I'm trying to support small businesses by buying their products and sending fun things to my team. Everybody got a cocktail mixing kit. It's an infusing kit. And that led to some things. Some people have gotten some fun food products to try. I bought a bunch of newly introduced products, and so everybody's gotten to try those and talk about what they did with them. But this sense of adapting every day, right? This working from home, I mean, the anxiety that I felt those first few weeks, the watching the news nonstop. So for me, the key to this has been creating structure in my day. And like Sheila, every afternoon, rain or shine, time adjusted, I go for a walk. I start my day, as I said, with yoga, end it with a walk. And in between, it's just everything is coming at us. Information overload, video overload. Most folks I talk to are exhausted from endless Zoom calls, right? So many of us who are still fortunate to be working, and whether we are or not, we're overwhelmed with things coming at us, right? Even staring at the screen and doing something like this is mentally and physically exhausting. So I think for me, adjusting motivation, recognizing that we have to be kind to ourselves, right? We can't be motivated all the time. It's okay not to be okay some of the time. And then do your best. Focus is really hard when you're at home. There's, you know, the kitchen's right next door, and the mess is in the other rooms, and the drawers that we want to clean out. And this is, you know, I think most people I talk to are doing better now, but it comes in waves. The emotions associated with a seismic shift in your life in what felt like a moment are real, and we're adapting every day. So motivation is hard. There's no great answer, but I go back to, again, the tools in my tool belt and develop your own.
What Wendy said is great, and I think human beings are, for the most part, creatures that adapt to circumstances, and I think for the, you know, most people that have been working remotely have done a great job. But my question, and this is a question to you guys, I would ask, do you prefer to work from home or at an office? Personally, before you answer, personally, I think there's nothing that can replace face-to-face interaction, and that is something I miss. But I would like to hear from the younger people. What are your thoughts?
Well, I personally, so I have been, ever since I started my own company here, I have been kind of working from home. I was co-working, actually, a co-working space, which I like. It's been an adjustment for me. I mean, I was a business development professional recently too, so, you know, out and about a lot. But I do miss I'm a very social person, and so sometimes the work from home can be a little bit challenging for me. But I definitely, like Sheila and Wendy both said, I go for walks. You know, sometimes if I'm losing focus or I just need a reset, I just go for a walk around the block, listen to a podcast or something, some music, and just go for a walk and then get back to it. And I think it's also kind of forced me to make more phone calls that I should probably be making, you know, that when you're surrounded by others and when you have other people to interact with, you don't maybe do. And now sometimes, you know, being, you know, at home alone for so much time, like you just want to make phone calls anyway. So it kind of encourages keeping in touch with people, make that phone call that you've been putting off because you were busy with other things. So I think just embracing the fact that, you know, it does make you kind of connect sometimes less with a core, you know, in an office, you have a core of connection, but it sometimes make you spread that connection a little bit more. So it's helped me in that way. And I'm still adapting and finding, you know, ways to be best at working from home, but that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I think I worked from home a decent amount at my previous job too for the last 3 years because we traveled a lot. So if we weren't traveling, we were either home or we would sometimes go in the office, and we targeted those in-person meetings intentionally and would like overload you almost. It was like 2 or 3 days of like being in one room with 3 people. I feel like what I will probably want if I had my perfect world, it's just that choice, like being able, I don't move my brain doesn't wake up very fast in the morning. So like I like to kind of be able to take it slow in the morning and check my emails and like do things in and around getting myself moving. And then I probably want to change where I am. Like once I am moving and I've knocked out a bunch of things. So in a perfect world, I think being able to have the flexibility to choose like where you want to be when you meet with other people and how to work from home. And I see that being something that's how we might ease back into working, is being able to work with your team and identify those key moments of when you should be in person. But I agree that it's also made me communicate a lot more. And being on a new team and having to do this, it's like made me assess how I communicate, because I feel like there's so many miscommunications. I've forced them all on video. But even then you're like, how do I want to get this idea across when like they're all numbers people and I am not a numbers person? And so you're like, how do we bridge this if we weren't in person and I could just show you? So I think it helps your skills, but I think we're going to target kind of a good balance in the future between work from home and not.
Yeah, I would like to jump in on this question that was turned back to the audience, because I'm kind of living it. The first 5 weeks I was working from home, you know, the whole time. And within the past 2 weeks, I've been on the job site 100% of the time. So that first week back, I was so excited. I'm like, oh yes, I can't wait to be back here. Week 2 and now week 3. I'm finding myself like, yes, I'm very much looking forward to a happy medium. I think I'm going to be very much more strategic in terms of the face-to-face meetings that I'm scheduling and making sure I can knock them out when I'm all on site or having those business transactions. And then the other days having specific meetings that can be accomplished from home. So I'm looking forward to a happy medium. I don't think without this pandemic, my company would have explored from a construction standpoint the ability to work from home. So I kind of am happy that it did happen in this way, I guess. But yeah, we're all adapting, and I think a happy medium is important for me.
Yeah, I'm definitely a social butterfly, and I have a business development position. So I love seeing people and being in person. And I think there is a really, a really hard thing about that to replace is those in-person interactions. But to Jake's point, I found that it's much easier to just pick up the phone and call someone now, because I'm missing those social interactions that happen naturally during the week, or the monthly check-ins that you would have over coffee with someone. We're not having those, or even bumping into each other at events. So it's forcing, in a good way, a new type of communication that wasn't part of my day-to-day as a business development position. But with that too, I think that's a great question. If anyone else that's on this would like to chime in, or at this time too, we've got about 10 minutes left. And so I want to make sure we utilize some of the open Q&A. So if anyone on today would like to unmute yourself, feel free to ask a question. And I think Chase might have also a question that came in earlier as well.
Yeah, I can go ahead and kick off one question that came through before the webinar, and then we can follow it up with the open forum. This question was specifically for Wendy. So one of the participants in today's webinar is a newcomer in the cannabis industry. And in short, basically, how does someone like them attract/engage a mentor like yourself? What makes you want to invest time and energy into someone that is up and coming in that current industry?
Chase, thank you. And to whoever submitted the question, that's a great question. I'll give you a couple of answers. Let's see, 5 or 6 years ago, along with a woman named Dina Rollman, we co-founded an organization called Illinois Women in Cannabis. And forget the fact that the name women is in the title. It has become the premier organization in the state of Illinois for convening and gathering people in the industry. We regularly have over 500 people in attendance at our events. And we started the organization on the principle that in this brand new industry, there was no reason that women couldn't get into the industry, and we wanted to provide a place where people could have conversations. Now that place is virtual, wanted to provide opportunities for networking, and we had this feeling that there was no glass or what's called the grass ceiling. And it really started out again focused on women, but now it's focused on everybody. There are wonderful ways to get involved, and there are, I think, over 600 members in the organization. And depending on what it is you want to do, I'd recommend joining Illinois Women in Cannabis and focusing on connecting with people who want to do the same things in the industry that you want to do. So if you're in marketing, find somebody whose focus is marketing, whether that's product or some brand development. If it's someone in finance and you're a finance person, you don't want to connect necessarily with an ops person. But what I recommend to people in general, most importantly, when you're trying to connect with a mentor, tell your story, right? We all connect to each other, and right now connecting virtually is hard, but when you tell your own personal story and share what it is you want, this is how we connect to each other. We hear something. I hear something in the stories that people tell to me, and I say, you know what, that resonates with me. This is someone I can connect to, because mentoring is really a two-way street. So at any given time, I mentor 5 or 6 women. Primarily, there are men also of, anywhere from high school to my age. And there is somehow a personal connection. We have to like each other. So I recommend, again, 2 things. Find somebody who shares with you your purpose or your why, and tell your story. And don't feel bad if the first time you try to connect with someone, it isn't the right connection. Keep trying. It's a little bit like dating, right? You don't go on one date and give up on humanity. We force ourselves to go back out there. So it is a process of finding connection. Hopefully that helps answer.
Laura and Chase, I have a question, and thanks panelists. What a great job and topics you've covered. There's this notion of, find a job that you love doing and you won't work a day in your life, right? We've heard that a million times from different people. I'm wondering what your perspective is on that. And Jake, when you were talking, it sort of reminded me of that. And in my own career path, I've taken positions where, man, I didn't want to go into that job, but the experience I got from doing it really enabled me to move on to other positions within my company that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So in your own career paths, what's your take on this notion of, you got to do something you love to do?
I'll jump in, I guess. I think it's kind of twofold. For one, the job is always, there's going to be moments where it's stressful. There's going to be moments where you doubt, it's still, at least in my opinion, you never have to work a day. I think you still have to work. I mean, not holistically, right? I mean, when you're passionate about it, it's all great and it makes you better for it. But there's going to be moments where it's work, no matter what you're doing, it's going to be tough. But I think, to your point, when you have to maybe take a job or, the biggest thing is, at least that I found, is that if you do it 100%, invest in it, learn about it, figure it out. And you may find if you give it a fair shot and you've really put your all into it and then it's time to make a change and make a move. But you don't know necessarily what you love and what you might find. I mean, I didn't even know what CBD was 5 years ago. And I would have, and even like, if you talked to me 8 years ago, wellness and all this stuff that I love now wasn't even on my radar. So, you start to learn But I think the key is you really do have to embrace and give everything your all when you do have to take something, so that you can find out, if it is something you're passionate about.
I think too, that I find that the more passionate I am, the less I'm able to stop doing it. So I feel like if you find something that you're super passionate about, like, it might not be that you're not going to work a day a day of your life, but essentially that, like, you're going to want to do it more. I think that's what it is. Like, I feel like you find something you're passionate about and you're invested, and it makes the work more enjoyable. Even when it's harder, you're more motivated. And I think too, the other thing that I always push some of the younger people on my other teams to think about when they've hit some hurdles is, like, I find if sometimes you hit those ruts where you're like, I'm just doing things where I'm not super motivated, or I don't feel super invested in this. I always push them to find something that they could do within the process where they could learn from it. So even if they're doing kind of mundane tasks, like, are you learning about the way that we are structuring our fees? And therefore, like, if you're doing a whole bunch of invoicing, you're learning this, and trying to find the motivation, not just in the tasks that they're doing, but also the knowledge that they're gaining from it. So that, like, when you hit those moments of not having the motivation, that can be what pushes you as well.
I'm going to jump in, just kind of funny. You can imagine that the pot business is a ton of fun. Just as much fun as it seems. But I would say that if anybody is at this moment in time looking for a new path, there is no other industry growing as quickly, maybe other than hand sanitizers and personal protective equipment. But there is tremendous opportunity, and it's a ton of fun to be in this business. So this one was kind of a no-brainer, because everybody, lots of jokes about being in the marijuana business. The last 7 years, I think I've heard them all. But this is one where you can actually be passionate about helping people. Plus, it's just fun to talk about pot all day. I'm joking; it's that oversimplification, but it's fun to be a part of a new industry, like life on a rocket ship, explosive growth into uncharted territories.
Oh yeah.
Answering Patrick a little bit, I am a very big believer in attitude, and with the right attitude, you can face any job and make the job that you think you don't like give you something, and you can make it fun and learn. It's about attitude. If you dwell on thinking, I don't want to do this, well, that's not going to take you anywhere. I think attitude is a primary component of a healthy professional life.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there we could probably take one more question before we close up.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question real quick, Laura. Thank you so much for the panel. It's good to see all you guys. And you guys have such interesting backgrounds. Everyone here is so different. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, Sheila, but just kind of talking about when you said that you kind of have like a 3-month and 6-month check-in with yourself, and you kind of these like 3 people that you look up to all the time. I thought that was so interesting. Is there anything that the other panelists, anything like that you do that kind of helps you if you're in a rut or if you don't know what to do? Anything like that Sheila mentioned?
I think, it's a really good question. And, to her point, I think there's a saying like, look at your boss and look at your boss's boss. And if you don't want to, if that's not somewhere you want to be in the next 5, 10, whatever years, then it's, you may need to reconsider your path. And that's a real thing. If you do look around, you're like, even if you're on a fast track and you're doing really well, it's like, but I don't see anyone who kind of has what I want. And not necessarily that, that it has to be the same as your bosses, but if you don't see yourself able to make the position you want, then maybe it is time to make a move. And I do think definitely like having some sort of plan of near and short and long-term goals you know, not that you have to stick to it, not that you can't vary from it, but just having some form of, you know, bumpers on in the bowling alley, so to speak, does help you really kind of frame it and not get lost in over analyzing a little bit. And so I think, you know, constantly evaluating that, and check-ins are, you know, are really important. You know, it's nice to have structured ones, but throughout as well, just constantly stepping back and zooming out is so important just in pretty much anything you do. But it really allows you to interpret, and, you know, you don't be judgmental to yourself. Don't think, oh, I should have been here, should have been there. It's not really about judgment. It's just about, okay, this is where I'm at, you know, accept it. And is this good? Is it bad? You know, what is the next step, so to speak? So I think self-reflection and check-ins are huge for just any change.
Well, if Daniel or Wendy want to chime in on that, I'll give you an open there, but otherwise we might be coming to our close here.
Okay.
So with that, I want to thank everyone that did attend today. And if you do have any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask today and didn't get a chance to, please feel free to send them over to myself. I'll chat through my email right now so you can grab that and send those over. Otherwise, thank you to our mentors for joining us. I appreciate your time. I'm sure everyone else here also appreciates your time and insight. And I wish everyone the best. And for any other upcoming CoreNet events, I'll put a plug in. Make sure to check out our CoreNet Chicago website. We've been have a lot of upcoming future events, and hopefully we can all stay connected from this point moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Here.